everybody, and welcome to the fifth episode of my podcast. My name is Issam Hijazi, and I'm going to be your host. You are currently watching this live on YouTube, LinkedIn, and Twitter. Today's topic will be the economics of data and analytics. More than ever, data is a critical and important asset to us for making very informed policy and operational decisions. But data as an asset is very unusual. We cannot use traditional accounting techniques to financially account for its value or how it depreciates. Because simply put, data value does not depreciate or depletes. Data is an economic asset that is revolutionizing the growth of the 21st century at unprecedented speed. You might think of it as the new oil, but it's really not. Data is sustainable, data is reusable, and you may think of it as the sun. So the question is, how organizations should think about how to monetize their data? Is it a question of selling it maybe, or something else? To answer these questions and expand on the topic, I'm very pleased to be joined by the Dean of Big Data, the one and only Bill Schmarzo. Bill is regarded as one of the top digital transformation influencers on big data and data science. His career spans over about 30 years, almost my age, in data warehousing, BI, and data analytics. He formerly served as CTO for Analytics and IoT at Hitachi Vantara, CTO of Big Data at Dell EMC, and Vice President of Analytics at Yahoo. Bill is also a University of San Francisco School of Management Executive Fellow and an Honorary Professor at the School of Business and Economics at the National University of Ireland. He has also authored a number of books like The Art of Thinking Like Data Scientist, Understanding How Big Data Powers Big Businesses, as well as the Big Data MBA. And I think that's where he got his title as the Dean of Big Data. And that book basically is about driving business strategies with data science and that sort of information. Now, the list really goes on and on, but let's just stop there and actually get to the show. But before we get started, I would like to ask everybody to do simple things. Now, you're probably watching this on LinkedIn or YouTube. Regardless where that is, please press the like button and share it with your connections so we can reach out to more people. And since this is a live podcast, you're able to comment and chat with us. And anything that you write will be visible to myself and to my guests, and we'll be able to incorporate that to our conversation. If you've got nothing to say, simply say hello, where you are from, and we'll probably say hello back. Now, without further ado, let's get started. Bill, good afternoon to you, sir. How are you?
Good, Issam, and yourself?
I'm great. Thanks for joining this live podcast with me, Bill. It's really an honor to have you on the show.
Well, I got to tell you, I'm a little worried about doing something live. I am notorious for saying things that I probably shouldn't say, and not having the edit button here really exposes me to expose my true feelings on topics. So I'll try to be contained here.
It's gonna be fun. Trust the process. And I'm gonna start by making you feel a bit uncomfortable, maybe. So let's see how you feel about this. The way I got to know you, Bill, is I know you worked with specific companies like Hitachi Vantara and Dell EMC, but the moment I really knew Bill was a moment I had about 2 years ago. I was based in Dubai, and I was working with the EMEA team at Hitachi Vantara, and I was basically hiring and expanding our team over there. And I was interviewing this person, and if that person is listening now, he will know who is he. And through the interview, you ask people, so tell me about yourself and why would you like to join this company? Back then it was Hitachi Vantara. And that person gave me, but generally speaking, when you ask people that question, they give you cheesy answers, like, because it's great companies, great tech, all these, I would say common answer. But that person gave me different answer. And he said, I want to work with Hitachi Vantara because Bill Schmarzo worked there now. And I've been following his career, and I'm very much a fan of him and admire him so much. I was like, Bill, who? And I knew you, but I wasn't expecting that kind of answer, And that moment, I knew that you are really an incredible asset to Hitachi Vantara. You're a credible person. You've got lots of things to learn from, and yeah, that was like the moment of truth about you.
Wow. Well, that's a great story to start off. And I've been, Isam, I've been very fortunate in that I've had a career that's offered me lots of opportunities, and I really believe that because of that, it's my job to give back and to share with others. And the one thing I've learned is that the more that I share, the more I seem to learn. It's kind of this really virtuous cycle. So that's a great story. I'm glad to hear that people enjoy my random thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm looking every morning. I wake up to Twitter. I wake up to wake. Where is Bill? I want to see him on my feed. I want to see, his news speech for the day, which is absolutely amazing. It's helping a lot of people. It's certainly helping me. So thank you for that, Bill. On behalf of everyone who's watching you.
Good. I'm glad we could all be part of the same community.
Absolutely. So before we get started, let's say hello to some of the people who are saying hello. So we've got Sarah, and she's saying, "Hey, Bill and Isam." Sarah here
Hey,
from
Sarah.
Sydney. Hey, Sarah. And
Sydney, love Sydney.
Yep.
Oh,
That's where
another
I am.
Sydney.
You should come here some point. Yeah, we've got another one from Discovery BI. I'm not sure if that's his name, but that's probably his handle.
That might be his
ID.
name, and his parents may have been very creative. So Discovery
Probably.
BI might be his name.
Yeah, actually, it's Greg. He's saying, "Hey, Greg from Sydney. Hey, Greg, thanks for joining the show." And we've got, I would say, Asia. That's how. Hopefully, I'm pronouncing that correctly. Saying Asia from Brunei. Hello, Asia. Good to have you on the
Cool.
show. All right, so let's get to the show. I'm gonna ask you, actually, make you another, uncomfortable, I would say, question or comment here, and that one would be around your attempt for the Nobel Prize in the economics for something that's called the Schmarzo Economic Digital Asset Valuation Theorem. Can you tell us more about that?
So everybody in life should have an aspirational goal. Some people want to be movie stars. Some people want to play in a rock band. Some people want to climb Mount Everest. Me, it's that Nobel Prize. And it really, while I really don't expect I'll get such an award, what I want to do is I want to elevate to a larger community the strategic importance of data from economics perspective. And economics is all about the creation of value. Right? Think about what economics is how do organization people create wealth or value? And so this idea of mounting this campaign, and I hope to get a few votes from this podcast, is that it's time that organizations start to realize that data is this unique economic asset and that we need to treat it differently. And so the best way that we could elevate the importance of data as this unique economic asset would be to get it a Nobel Prize. And if I have to carry that Nobel Prize, that burden with me to win that, so data gets a proper recognition, well then, that's my cross to bear.
I think it's just about time until you get there. I believe in that theorem. It looks good, and I've gone through some of your papers. But can you give us an idea about what that theorem is really about, Bill?
Yeah, so it's and this theorem got started based on some research that I did probably 4 or 5 years ago at the University of San Francisco, which was we launched a project there and around trying to determine the value of data. And I don't know if we're going to talk about that or not, but I'm going to go to it now. Is that project was a personal quest of mine because I've been in this industry. I've fortunately 40 years, and I've always found it frustrating when I talk to organizations, especially business executives or sometimes CIOs as well, is that no one knew how to put a value on data. And so we launched this project. The advantage of being a professor is I have access to a lot of really brilliant, really a lot of hardworking, and a lot of free resources to launch this project. And one of the things that came out of that project was a conversation I had with one of my research assistants. And she came up to me and said, "Professor Schmarzo, you asked me to go out and look for assets that could proxy for what data is." And she said, "There is no such thing. I can't find a asset in our balance sheet that looks like data." I mean, she said, think about it. Data never wears out. Data never deletes. And the same data set can be used across an infinite number of use cases at zero marginal cost. And when she said zero marginal cost, it was like, oh my gosh, I've been thinking about this wrong. This is one of those pivot moments when you realize that your current frame of thinking is wrong. And that current frame of thinking is preventing you from seeing what is so obvious that she could come up to it. So anyway, what we learned is that if you build out your data and analytic capabilities one use case at a time, that you have the ability to not only build out your assets incrementally, but you can drive it on a value basis. And so what happens here is you build out your data and analytics one use case at a time. And on this chart here, use cases go across the bottom. There are three effects. Number one, through the reuse of your data and analytics, you're flattening your marginal costs. I mean, pretty soon you have all the data sets you're going to need in your data lake, which, by the way, isn't all your data sets. It's only the ones that you need to drive value, right? Pretty soon you have built all the analytics as analytic modules, not as one-off orphaned ML models, but as reusable analytic assets. And over time, then, your marginal costs start to flatten because the reuse cost of data and analytics is near zero. So that's effect number one. Effect number two is that green line, which is because I can reuse the data and analytics, I can accelerate time to value and de-risk projects, so I can drive value more quickly, right? My first use case might take 6 months, my second one might take 5, then 4, and now I'm doing 2 simultaneously, but it's all, then 3 simultaneously. So you can see how by reusing data and analytics, the use cases, I can shrink the time to value and I can de-risk. But the third, so those first two by themselves should get every CXO, every C-suite, every CIO jumping out of their seats at the potential of maximizing that gap between the red and the green line. And then we throw in the purple line. I call this the Tesla effect, the TensorFlow effect, which is what happens if you build analytic modules as composable, reusable, continuously learning and adapting analytic modules. That what happens is any improvements you make into the performance and predictive capabilities of that module, any enhancements you make ripple back to all the other previous use cases that use that. So if in use case number 12, you have an anomaly detection module and one of your big giant brain data scientists figures out how to make it 1% more effective using feature engineering and some new techniques and such, right, every use case that used that just got 1% more effective for free. And that's where you see that explosion effect. And so that to me is the real aha here. And there's only a few companies out there who have really kind of got this. Again, I use Tesla as an example. I think what Google's doing with TensorFlow, the reason why I think Google open sourced the single most important technology they have, which is TensorFlow, right? The technology that drives their search, their retail, everything, right? Their online stuff. They open source it. I mean, who in their right mind would open source the most important tool they have? Well, they open source it so they get more people using it, so it gets better. Every use case, it gets better. And who's the master of using TensorFlow to drive monetization? Well, Google. So everybody's helping Google make more money. It's a brilliant strategy. And it's right there, Isam. It's right there in front of us. They're doing this game right in front of us. But sometimes you got to take off the frame you have about how you think of data and analytics as, this a financial perspective or an accounting perspective, and think about it from an economic perspective and how you can drive this increase in value.
Right. So Bill, this brings me to or makes me wonder. So you've just mentioned 2 great examples of companies who are actually using that, Google and Tesla. Does this mean that this economic digital asset valuation theorem only works for the, let's call them the big boys or the big whales in the market, or it actually works also for small, medium-sized businesses?
It can work for any organization, and there's a couple of reasons why that's happened. First off, the bevy of open source tools out there now allows any organization to be able to build what I call these analytic modules, these composable, reusable, continuously learning and adapting analytic modules. The open source community has opened up all kinds of venues. You don't need to be a big player to be able to get the tools. And then the cloud has also allowed us to get in and scale linearly with how we expand. So it isn't the domain of the big players. So the big players are the ones who are making the most out of this. And this may be part of the reason why they're big players, is because they're doing this. But anybody of any size, if you have the right mentality, the right frame of thinking about how you're building out your data analytic assets, anybody can prosper from this. And by the way, it's not just first world countries, right? It's other countries as well. There's no reason why everybody can't do this, but it does take you to change your frame about how you think about data and analytics. And that changing one's frame is a lot harder than changing one's technology.
I couldn't agree more. And I think, I wanted to ask you this question, but actually you brought the answer somehow. The current time that we're living in allows us to do that, basically. I mean, if you go back maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago, that might be something not impossible, but much, much harder than now. Now you've got all these open source frameworks that allows you to execute such kind of initiatives. You've got the cloud, which allow you to be elastic and actually execute as you need, rather than just buy all the infrastructure and technologies and stack them in your operations centers or whatever. So now I guess it's the time for us that allows us to do that. So my question was going to be, what has changed over the past 1-2 decades? I mean, the fundamentals are still pretty much the same, but probably the means are different. What's your take on that?
Well, you hit it right. The open source tools allows anybody to get in. The cloud allows linear scalability, right? Buy as you need, not buy for your most maximum need.
Right.
The other things, though, that are also important is the bevy of educational and training tools that are out there. You think about Coursera and other sort of things. If you want to learn about neural networks or machine learning or deep learning or anything else, it's all out there.
Just
the amount of free training out there is staggering. So you don't need to have a degree from a top 10 university when all the professors at the top 10 universities are putting their courses out there for free for everybody to look at. This is the golden age of learning and sharing. We've never seen anything like this. It's tremendous.
Absolutely. And also you don't have to build everything from scratch, which is great. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can get pieces from a lot of places and put them all together, and you come up with an application, a new platform, without having you to do the whole work. If you go back 20 years ago, you have to code every single line. Now you just go to Stack Overflow, you go to blogs, you copy paste, and you come up with a new application. I've done that myself. I'm not a data scientist, but I was able to create some sort of Python application that allows me to identify faces in pictures and orchestrate that without having me being a data scientist. So the knowledge is there. It's just for people to grab it. So people who actually have the guts to do it are I believe, are the ones who are going to be the winners during our times.
Yeah, Isam, I couldn't agree more. It's why one of my favorite hashtags phrases when I talk to students is hashtag fearless. Yeah. Be fearless, right? Don't be afraid of making mistakes. This is how the world has changed, though, too. The people who grew up building data warehouses, let's be really honest. We built data warehouses in the 80s and the 90s and the 2000s. It was really hard to build a data warehouse, right? They were very rigid. They were highly engineered, all dimensional. You had to have it in a certain format to even make this stupid thing work, right? And then being a database or data warehouse administrator's worst nightmare is when somebody knocked on your door and said, "Hey, Schmarz, I want to add a new data set to our data warehouse." It's like, holy cow, I might as well go find a new job. That's, so yeah. Things have really changed. And I think, Isam, the impact here is that big bang IT projects are dead. Now, this is what's scary for a lot of CIOs. And I'm going to get, this is live, so I'll probably say something stupid here. But I think that the reason why we're not seeing more widespread adoption of the incremental way to build out your data and analytics environment is because a lot of CIOs rose to power in big organizations because they survived their SAP or Oracle ERP implementation, right? You think about an ERP implementation, it's 50, 60, $100 million. It's 5 years, it's millions of lives. And at the end of 5 years, you hope something of value squirts out at the end, but it didn't. Right, you got better operational systems, but you didn't get better insights, right? And so you spend all this massive amount of money to operationalize and capture this data, and you didn't have any money left to go out and figure out how to monetize it. So I think that we see a lot of CIOs who have that old school legacy thinking that's holding them and their organizations back. And I'll tell you right now, like yourself, there's a younger group, a younger generation coming up who doesn't think like that. And the world's going to change, and it's going to change fast as these younger, more fearless minds start saying, let's try this and see what happens.
Absolutely, absolutely. The key takeaway, I guess, here is stop resisting and just go for it. Be fearless. I like
Be
that.
fearless.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's go and see what new people are coming in and saying. We've got here Mahmoud. He's saying, "Hey, Mahmoud from Sydney. Hey, Mahmoud." And we've got Keith. Hey, guys, great to see you. The band back together. Hey, Keith.
Amen, Keith. Amen.
We've got Discovery BI telling, totally support you on this, Bill. I like the theorem as a method to value data for executives. Absolutely agree with that.
Thank you, Greg. I know Discovery BI equals Greg now. I've mapped that in my meditation.
Absolutely, yeah. We've got BizCubed team here, in Sydney watching this live. Hello, BizCubed team.
I tell you what, I love all the people from Sydney because one of my favorite places to visit is Sydney. I just think that's a wonderful city.
We'll wait for you then. We'll plan something soon after this, pandemic ends, and then maybe we'll
Amen. I love that. Yeah.
All right, we've got Valdisir. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Saying hi, Bill and Issam. Valdisir from Lisbon. Hello, Valdisir. I love Lisbon. I've been to Lisbon. It's a great country, by the way. We've got LinkedIn user. I don't know why the name is not being displayed. Hey guys, enjoy the coffee while enjoying your podcast. Cheers, LinkedIn user. We've got Raj saying organizations with strategic value mindset and high data literacy. I would guess he was commenting on one of the notes that you were saying here.
Yep. He's spot on.
Yeah, Sarah saying interesting theorem, Bill. See, now you're gaining some new voices. People are going to support this, and you're gonna win the Nobel Prize, Bill, after this podcast. I guarantee you.
I tell you what, we're gonna have one heck of a party when I got that big bling hanging around my neck.
Absolutely. All right, LinkedIn user asking, do you think that traditional educational system, school, university, is in danger of being replaced by MOOC? I believe MOOC is, referring to those, online educational portals that we see now.
Do you want me to answer that?
I
think that's a great question. Since I do a lot of work with universities, I think universities are being forced to change their game. That the MOOCs out there are, because these things are so available, that universities can't survive by providing just the basic level stuff. They've got to think about what it is for students who are eventually going to be back on campus. And what we do with the classes I teach, we do lots of team exercises because working in teams is the way of the future. And we like to mix the teams up. We like to bring people together for one project, have them work together, and then we break them up again and try a different team. Because you have to, one of the things I really strongly believe is that organizations that are going to be successful are those organizations that exhibit organizational improv, the ability to mix and match teams given the problem they have. So your question here, I think, is a good one, because I think what schools need to do is they need to teach their students and graduates how to work more effectively together across a diverse set of perspectives.
Right. All right, another comment or question from Keith saying, Bell, if you had powers of inception, what thought would you plant into every CEO? Ooh, that's an interesting question.
No, I love this question. So Keith, yes. So here's what I would say, if and I do say this a lot to the executives I do get a chance to, I don't talk to nearly enough, but I would start by saying this, Keith. I would say, if you believe that data is the new oil, and that the same way that oil fueled the economic growth of the 20th century, that data will be the catalyst for the growth in the 21st century. So if you truly believe that data is the new oil, that data is the most valuable resource on the planet, then the single most important question that a CEO and the C-suite needs to ask themselves is this: how effective is our organization at leveraging data and analytics to power our business models? So that would be the conversation. If I could plant any seed, if I could do the inception thing and plant a seed in somebody's head, I'd plant that question about how effective are we at leveraging data and analytics. I'd want them to sit and contemplate about, well, how do we compare against best in practice and best in industry? And if we aren't very good, how do we get better at it? So to me, it's a great question. It's actually a question I like to start a lot of my conversations with, because if it allows us in having those conversations to reframe it not about technologies, not about, how good are you at TensorFlow or Jupyter Notebooks or whatever it is, right? It's how good are you at the business models, right? Organizations don't need a big data or analytics strategy. What they need is a business strategy that exploits big data and analytics.
Absolutely. That was on point. Thanks for sharing that, Bill. All right, and we've got Grace saying, seriously, IT people are just hanging on their fingertips. Absolutely great.
I think so.
All right, comment from Paul, everything about Fearless. I couldn't agree more. And I also spent years with old school data warehousing, but big data in Perl.
There we go.
All right, Paul again. He's loving what he's hearing. So much timidity, concern, or wise defensive mindset about. Also true. And now we know who is the LinkedIn user. His name is Serge Hodder, and he is from Singapore. Hello, Serge, and you're welcome for having us.
But by the way, I love the live chat. I love the questions we're getting from people. This is something we really don't get when we do this thing kind of recorded. So I'm digging this.
Yeah, only on Isam Show. Remember that, Bill. All right, Paul again. Mixing teams up sounds live. XPs and pairs programming. Shared ownership, always been a big fan of that. All right, great. So people, keep these questions coming in, your comments. It's keep us more exciting, myself and Bill. So Bill, moving on, I wanted to ask you about something I've read in some of your papers, and that is the collaborative value creation framework. Before we get into that, did you come up with that as well?
Yeah, so I developed an early value engineering framework back in the 1990s, and I was at Sequent Computer. We called it the business benefit analysis.
Right.
And the challenge we had, which even 1990s we still have today, right, is that organizations were storing all this data, but they didn't know how to monetize it. And so I created the frame of that. I refined it when I went to Business Objects, and we used that as one of our go-to-market approaches back in the early 2000s. And then I further refined it at Dell EMC and then Vantara again. It's one of these things that I feel personally very strong about, because what it does for me is it immediately makes me think about how I approach things from the frame of my customer. If it's not valuable to the customer, then no how much I wave my arms and talk feeds and speeds, it's not valuable. And so the value engineering process really forces you to walk in the shoes of your customer and to identify how do you create value with their eyes. And I will tell you, the success rate we've had in using this in my career is in the high 90s. Now, I have to admit, I cheat, right? I don't work with organizations who won't bring the business stakeholders into the conversation. Right? If it's only an IT conversation, I love the comment that someone made it, IT is hanging on by their fingernails, right? The IT organization by themselves can't create value. Fact, right? They can't. You have to bring in the business stakeholders, because they're the only ones who have any ink in their pen. They're the only ones who can actually drive value. And so this value engineering process, the envisioning process that goes along with it, if you don't bring the business users into it, no, thank you. I'm not doing it. And so that's why I think I have such a high success rate, is because I mandate up front that you have to bring those people in. It's not an IT exercise. Excellent.
I love frameworks, Bill. It makes me be more systematic in general and follow specific guideline. And if I hear this correctly, this value creation framework is something that allows organization to go and create big data business strategy, not big data strategy. Is that correct?
Yeah. And so how the process works is you first need to understand what's important to the organization over the next 12 to 18 months. So you always have to frame it. If it's 5 years, no one cares, right? Everybody who had a 5-year plan probably got fired anyway, right? So So the way you start that, if you're dealing with a public company, is, read the annual report. What's important in the organization? They trying to improve customer retention or release new products. So you start by understanding what's valuable to that organization and how much value is it worth if you can solve that problem. The second step in the process is to bring in a diverse set.
Can I stop you there for a second? Because
Sure.
My favorite step is the first step. It is the prioritization matrix. And it sounds to me, when I read your researches and papers, it sounds to me like a quadrant. Something that makes me see things clearly on the spot. I mean, you can think of it as the magic quadrant that you see with, products scattered all over the graph. But this is about business objectives and see how effective they are. Are we able to do them and all that? Can you just give us more details about it? I'll just plot your matrix over here on the screen so people can see what this is about.
So what happens when you focus on a business initiative, you'll uncover, by working across the different stakeholders, a whole wide range of use cases that support that particular business initiative. So as an example here, it's a smart city business initiative. We did this for one of our clients. So they've got a bunch of use cases around optimized traffic or improve road maintenance and building permits. So a whole bunch of use cases, right? And you collaborate with people and you come up with these use cases, right? This is the beauty. So you take this and you create this little quadrant on a flip chart, and you've got each of the use cases as a Post-it note, and you bring everybody together and you say, okay, over the next 12 to 18 months, vis-a-vis each other, what's the business value of each of these use cases and what's the implementation feasibility? And you let people have a voice. You make sure everybody has a chance to say, well, and they'll say, for example, B is more important than A to me. And I'll just say, why? What makes B more important than A? And they have to justify it. And so first off, on that business value axis, you get the business stakeholders who have to justify why B is where it is, or why is D higher than F, right? So they're the ones who own that conversation, and you're holding their feet saying, okay, so you're telling me that it's valuable for this reason. The other axis, though, is implementation feasibility. Some of these use cases are really easy. I got the data, I got the people, I got the analytics, right? I got the way to render the analytic results to my key users. Beautiful, right? So the feasibility is high. But sometimes you have feasibility that's like impossible. The famous use case I, right? The idea here is that this is a use case that's going to change the world. The problem is you've got zero chance of success. So the idea here is that you use this matrix in a very interactive session. You bring everybody together, so you use lots of design thinking techniques, and then you have this conversation that takes place. And one of the hints here is you better have at least 2 scribes, because the conversations that are happening between people regarding value and feasibility is illuminating. And when you walk out of here, you know exactly why you're going to start with B, why D will be next, why A will be next, because you've laid out that roadmap that then, as you can remember, ties back to that Schmarzo Nobel Prize chart that says use case by use case, we're going to build these things out. Use case by use case, we're going to build out our data and analytics capabilities.
I love that. It just makes life much, much easier. And it really democratization at work. So you're bringing all business units, all business people into the same conversation, and you're plotting all these, initiatives or visions that they have, and then you start prioritization them, which is absolutely amazing.
And why this is so important, why it's so important you bring all the stakeholders together offsite for a half-day workshop to work your way through this, is that these kinds of big data and advanced analytics projects, they don't fail mostly because of the technology. They fail because of passive aggressive behavior, that 100%. Somebody's voice didn't get a chance to get heard, and that somebody's going to get you, right? And so you've got to root out passive aggressive behaviors up front. And that helps you then to actually then drive adoption, because if you build the analytics and no one uses them, then who cares?
100%. Couldn't agree more. All right, so let's move to the second step in that framework. I think it's the analytics profile. Can you tell us more about that?
So the analytics profile is, think about it as a digital twin kind of a concept. And that is what we're going to do for each of the organization's key entities. They might be human, like customers or patients or students or teachers or engineers, or it might be things, devices like compressors and chillers and and turbines and such, right? What we're going to do is we're going to build a very detailed behavioral profile on each one of those entities. And so it isn't about, for example, creating a 360-degree view of the customer. I could care less about that. What's most important for me might be, for example, the propensity to respond to a certain promotion. It might be a score regarding their likelihood to leave the organization. It might be understanding their propensity to recommend you to somebody else. So the idea is you build these very detailed profiles at the level of each individual around, and you use the use cases to drive the analytics you're building. So you're going to build a propensity model. You're going to build a recommendation model. You're going to build a advocacy model, right? You're going to build all these different things, and then everybody has a different score. It's a really simple concept. If you think about a credit score, for example, everybody has a credit score, right? And a credit score is used by a lot of different institutions to figure out your likelihood to repay a loan. All we're doing is taking that idea of a score and applying it to every other aspect, whether it be, customer-centric things, or, looking at students who are most likely to fail their freshman year, looking at people who are most likely to catch COVID, and people then looking at scoring people who, if they catch COVID, their probability of dying. We can do all this. It's not impossible, but it gets down, you have to change the mindset. We don't look at segments of customers. We don't look at segments of students. We don't look at segments of wind turbines or jet engines. We look at them individually, and we make then individual decisions, very informed, granular decisions to how to better serve that particular entity.
That's absolutely amazing. Yeah, and I couldn't agree more. And then the third step is the role of the data lake, which I might be challenging you on that, Bill. But first, let's hear what you have on that one.
So to me, I did a project with the IMF, and I think I can say this because it was a long time ago, and they used the phrase that the data lake for them, when it was driven from a use case perspective, that data lake became this collaborative value creation platform. You could almost call it a data monetization platform. Right. And the idea here was that not only was it a central repository for all their curated data, so people could easily use it and share their data learnings, but it was also a repository for all these analytic models they were building. So if you're going to build a propensity model, why have 20 different propensity models out there? Build one and allow everybody to continue to use it and make it better and better over time. And so the data lake becomes more than just a data repository. And that's what a lot of people think. I'm going to put out Hadoop out there. I don't need to worry about, whether it's structured or unstructured. It's going to throw it, it's on Hadoop, Hadoop, right? This is great, right? No. It's not a repository of data. It's a repository of insights, because in the end, you don't monetize the data. You monetize the insights about your customers, your products, and your operations. You monetize the insights, not the data.
Have you heard of the term or the new architecture called data mesh, Bill?
I've heard it. I got to tell you, I don't know a lot about it. There's people know more than me, obviously, if I don't know much about it.
So I'll tell you just a bit about it. The people who created that are actually saying that big data the data lakes are doomed to failure, and we should redesign the whole architecture from business as well as physical perspective, meaning infrastructure, but as well as how we think about having this centralized monolithic architecture. They say it won't scale, it won't work for the future. And what they say is we need to start thinking of creating data domains as products and have people who are specialized in a specific domain working in specific team together, and then provide the data that they have as a service for other people across other departments possibly to be consumed, but not to put the data in a central place. And I'll give you an example. So let's say we're having a company which produces music, and they have their online presence and apps. And one of their apps, they have this media player where you play music, and you're taking some sort of I would say analytics. You're picking up what people are doing, the behavior of the users, and all that. So you dedicate a team for that specific piece of the software, and then you have another bunch of people doing something else for the business, and each team basically consist or having their data science team, they're having data engineering team, and they're using their own technology. And after that, they're exposing the data or the I would say the processed data to other people where they can use that again and again. So basically, they are opposing what data lake is about. And I just wanted to take your pick your brain on that, basically.
So, a couple of thoughts. First off, no one's ever said a data lake is physically in just one location. I mean, most people have data lakes that are logically spread across. The key point that we learned from our data warehouse days is don't support the replication of data. What happens is when data gets replicated, when we went from data warehouses to data marts are much easier to put up. They were very domain specific, right? The problem was that the data in the different data marts didn't tie together. I can't tell you how many meetings I was in when somebody would say our sales last quarter were this, finance, sales, and marketing would all argue. No, it's this. No, it's that. Well, it's because they all had taken the same point of sales data. They had done their own, matching the data together and came up with their own version. So to me, there's first off, a data lake doesn't need to be physically in one location. It's logically spread out. And I also have very concerns about overly rigid structures. Data silos are the killer of the economic value of data, because the economic value of data is based on being able to share the same data set across an unlimited number of use cases. So the minute you start siloing it, it gets dangerous. Again, I don't know data fabrics, but if anything leads to data silos, then it's boom, that's not good. The last point I would make here is that instead of thinking about data from a data source perspective, think about data from a use case perspective. And the reason why this is important is because depending on the use case can tell you what signal from noise in a data set. What signal for one use case in a data set might be noise for another use case in that data set. So when you have a data set mentality, you automatically, I'm fearful that you put yourself into this technology frame and you limit your thinking. Instead, think about it from a use case, and then you're snaking your way through the data sets to find what you need, because that's the only way you can distinguish signal from noise buried in the data.
Agreed. And I think also by having the data lake concept, you actually creating the data democratization concept, allowing other people to probably come up with new ideas, be more creative, rather than just telling them this is the data that you have to work with. Now you have access to everything, and you can come up and be creative with whatever you have.
Yeah, I mean, architecturally, if you do it in a fabric or a lake, I don't care. I just want to be able to easily share the same data set across an unlimited number of use cases. The minute you you inhibit that, then you've already started to destroy the economic value of data. And then my Nobel Prize ain't going to happen.
Fair enough. All right, let's go back to what people are saying in the chat. We've got Gray saying, hey, Bill, generally, value of data is contrasted with cost of not using data and analytics. Does your theorem cover explicit measures?
Value data is contrasted with the cost of not using data. The cost of not using data. I'm not sure I can answer this. It's a good question. I need to give it some thought. When we think about the value of data, the way the theorem works is that the value of the data is determined by its contribution to a use case. So, for example, if I have a use case where I can improve cross-sell effectiveness by 2% and it's worth $45 million. If there's 3 data sets that comprise that, then they each get what's the math? $15 million each credit, right? So I'm not thinking about the particular metrics, but it's a good question, because one of the things where it does get interesting is if I can get down, especially in the analytic module. So the same way that I'm allocating the value of the use case down to the data sets, I'm also allocating the value of the analytic modules down, from the use case down to the analytic modules. And we're now getting into a world where with explainable AI, I can now start figuring out which of the variables in my data are actually most important in driving the performance of that model. The reason why this is important, there's all kinds of, GDPR and fair credit reporting and the California Privacy Act. There's all kinds of reasons why you need to have that visibility into the impact that each variable has on the results of the model. But from a CIO or chief data officer perspective, it tells me which of my data elements are most valuable. And if I'm going to spend money trying to improve the quality of my data, then I'd better know which data sets can benefit the most from that investment. So I probably didn't answer the question very thoroughly, but at least I could give you an idea of how we think about how we attribute value from the use cases down to the supporting data sets and down to the reusable analytics.
That question did put you on your toes, Bill, didn't it?
I love it. Yeah, it made me think. I like thinking. I don't
Keep them
think
coming,
very often.
people. Yeah, keep asking. Keep sending questions to make Bill more uncomfortable. We need to do that. All right, we've got a comment from Paul. He's saying, I use a corporate data supply chain approach. The term value engineering is very complementary to that. Nice.
I love that. Yes, very much so.
BizCube is asking here, is this going to be recorded? Yes, absolutely. This is going to be recorded, and we'll share that with you. Paul saying, read annual report.
Oh, read an annual report, especially there's two areas of annual report that I really love. So first off, the president's letter, because the president's letter, especially the last part of it, not the first part where they brag about how smart they were and how they survived COVID, but they talk about what their plans are for next year. We're trying to open more stores. We're trying to release more products. We're trying to keep our rides up. The other section to look at is the risks. These organizations have to articulate what their risks are. That is gold, because that tells you what they're doing, but what they're worried about. And those pain points are areas where data and analytics can really help drive value.
Now,
I love this, Paul. Thank you.
This is a tip for salespeople as well, to go there and read that, because then they will know what these organizations are up to and then can propose the right solutions.
So our thinking like a data scientist process starts with this.
We'll come to this.
Each one of my students are taught, you pick a company, let's find their annual report. Let's see if any of their executives blog. Let's look what the financial analysts are saying about them. So you have to understand how, if you want to help your customers make more money, the 4 M's of big data, right? Make me more money. If you want to help them make me more money, you better understand as a business how they make money.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. All right, and Serge asking here, does it mean that the value of data is strongly coupled to the metrics used to evaluate the use case?
Yes, it does, especially in the analytic modules. So you might have a large point of sales system which has all kinds of different metrics in it. You will want to figure out for the data elements in there that are being used to predict, for example, customer churn or such. So yeah, you do have that. There's a lot of fields in, think about a point of sale system. You have the clerk, you have, how long a transaction took, how many things were scanned, how many things were hand coded. It's all buried in there in detail, right? But you don't need all that if you're trying to figure out what a customer retention problem is. So you're spot on that you do strongly couple the specific metrics back to the analytic models that are used to help derive the value of that use case.
Excellent. All right. I guess we'll take one last question, then we'll proceed. Keith asking, Bill, is there a company out there or a case study where we can research that represents best practice for economics and DNA?
Data and analytics, I'm assuming there, Keith. Yeah.
Yes.
The company I love to look at is Tesla. And Elon Musk really caught my attention. He really, put me on my toes when he made a comment. He said, I believe that when you buy a Tesla, you're buying an asset that appreciates, not depreciates in value the more you use it. Now, most people thought, well, yeah, you're saying that Teslas are going to appreciate in the value. You're going to buy one, stick it in the garage, and then 30 years from now, it's worth a whole bunch of money. No, he's not saying that Tesla is a 1964 and a half Mustang, right? No, he's saying that the reason why these cars appreciate in value is because the more that they're used, the more that they learn. This is a key point. Learning in knowledge-based industries, the economies of learning are more powerful than the economies of scale, which is why, by the way, big bang projects are dead in knowledge-based industry. You need to learn. And what Elon Musk has said and what he's proving out with his autonomous vehicle is that every Tesla car, and there's 600,000 of these things, roaming around the streets. Every one of these cars is continuously learning. And at the end of each day, each of the car's learnings are shipped back up to this giant Tesla cloud in the sky, where these learnings are meshed together and then shipped back down to these cars. So think about it. If one Tesla car gets involved in an avoidable car accident, that next day, every other car now knows how to avoid that accident. Think about that for a second. So to me, Tesla is the prime of this. When people think about, we're competing with Tesla, they're thinking about, building electric cars. Elon Musk is already fighting the next game, folks. You've already lost, because he's not thinking about the electric cars. That game is over. He's thinking about autonomous vehicles and how he's going to use that autonomous vehicle engine he's building in cars and trucks, and who knows, it might pop its way into bulldozers and trains, and who else might. I mean, it's brilliant. So I love the Tesla work. And Elon, if you hear me out there, yeah, maybe I'd love to come work there. Yeah, maybe bring me in and I'll help you. I'll share the Nobel Prize with you.
Fair enough. All right. You mentioned something very interesting, which is the economies of learning versus the economies of scale. I think that's beautiful. That's beautifully put. And I think even personally, I do that unconsciously at certain level, and people might be doing that, but they should start think of doing that consciously. Can you tell us more about what that exactly means, Bill?
So what it means is two perspectives. So first off, on the technology side, we know from things like AI and reinforcement learning that these continuous learning environments, that they get better and better over time. In fact, I'm not even going to go down that route. I think the Tesla example is good. And what I find most interesting is on the human side. Organizations that are going to be successful in digital transformation aren't going to be the ones who only master AI and machine learning and reinforcement learning, but are also the ones that learn how to create empowered teams that are constantly trying and learning and sharing those learnings. And when you couple empowered teams, and by the way, that means those empowered teams sit at the front lines of customer engagement or the operation of the business. They're not the high up muckety mucks in the ivory tower who think they know everything, but haven't talked, haven't been a barista at a coffee shop and maybe ever, right? But when you couple this idea that humans can learn really rapidly, and you couple that with AI and machine learning devices that are also learning very rapidly, now you have a very powerful combination. You have the synergy where the technology is learning based on what it's seeing, and humans are also being provocative and pushing outside the edges to take the AI into areas that the AI never saw before. The economies of learning is not just something that you see from a data and analytics perspective, but when you start to create these empowered teams, that's where the magic happens.
Yeah, I guess this is great. It's just about taking one step at a time rather than taking the whole projects at once. And once you made success with the first project, let's put it as an example, then you can reapply what you've learned in the next project, and that will save you time. And in fact, you can automate, which is something I would say everyone is looking forward to have.
Automate and make autonomous, even go from automate to autonomous where it's continuously learning. Again, if you couple humans with that, you think about how maybe you learn to play soccer or how you learn to play golf or something, right? You learned iteratively, right? Over time, first, if you're playing golf, first, you did this and you perfected that and such. And so this idea of the human, it's a very much a natural thing for us, that curiosity that always forces us to go learning. The problem is a lot of our educational systems, especially maybe the more expensive or higher level ones, they seem to want to drain the curiosity and creativity out of people. More than ever, as AI and machine learning become more and more prevalent, I believe what you're going to see is that AI and machine learning are going to force humans to become more human, to learn to embrace the natural curiosity that resides in us, that drives us from curiosity to create something, to be creative, and ultimately to drive innovation at scale. That's the beauty of what's happening here. And it's going to be, people are worried that AI and ML are going to replace workers. Well, in some cases, yeah, but they're going to liberate a whole new generation of people who not only are willing to learn iteratively, but are also willing to unlearn when things change, who are willing to change and pivot their framework and realize the way I was thinking about that was right at that point in time, but it's changed. So economies of learning are a powerful, powerful concept in knowledge-based industries where insights and knowledge are the differentiation between failure and success.
Right, right. And this brings me to one of your books with the title of Thinking Like a Data Scientist. How data scientists think, Bill? Are they different than the average people or the other people?
Yeah, if you think about a software developer, for example, a software developer upfront defines the requirements for success. A data scientist, by burrowing through the data, discovers it. And so you have a whole different approach. Discovery of the insights that really drive a model is based on nurturing that curiosity. Your best data scientists, by the way, may not be data scientists. They may be the business people who you've taught to think like a data scientist, who are helping you to brainstorm the different variables and metrics that might be better predictors of performance. And so you have an entirely different mindset that's based on the power of might, right? Finding those variables and metrics that might be better predictors of performance. Because as an organization in data science, if in fact as an organization overall, to be successful, if you don't have enough might moments, you'll never have any breakthrough moments. And so data scientists think differently. And by the way, I would argue that kids growing up naturally think that way. They're naturally curious to try things, to try different combinations of things. Data scientists who think they have to operate within on railroad tracks are doomed. What we try to do is thinking like a data scientist process is to put in guardrails so they can bounce around freely. And sometimes you go outside the guardrail to try something, but it's all based on the scientific method of based around curiosity to try different things. Because here's the last gotcha here. How do you know when an analytic model is good enough? You're predicting the future. You're never going to be 100%. How do you know if 90% is good enough, or 95% or 85%? Well, you only know if a model is good enough if you know the costs associated with false positives and false negatives. And that's not a data scientist job. The subject matter experts, the business stakeholders, they're the ones who need to go through and think through, well, if this is a false positive, what are the costs associated with that? And that's a creativity process. You have to envision what might happen and what's the false negatives, right? So this idea of creativity that's the heart of thinking like a data scientist.
Beautiful, beautiful. I love that, Bill. And this makes me want to do a new announcement of something that's coming up. I hope I got the date right. But on December 9th, I believe you'll have your new book released. And that book will have the title of The Economics of Data Analytics and Digital Transformation. And I hope, I'm confident actually, that most of those information that you told us today are going to be on that book. But can you comment on that, please?
Yeah, so that book represents sort of the culmination of, and this would be my fourth book. And it really takes what I wrote in the first and second book, the big data book, and then the big data MBA, and tries to take all that to the next level. It's very pragmatic, a lot of homework assignments. It's written as, I will tell you right now, it's as boring as hell. It's written as a textbook. And so if you're looking for light reading on a weekend, don't pick this book up. This book is designed to be, dog-eared and have marks all over it and Post-it notes. This is a book that you use. And I'll conclude by saying my favorite chapter in this book is the last chapter, chapter 9, because it's all about team empowerment. And the first 8 chapters are all about economics and data and analytics. But in the end, it's that chapter 9 to me that I'm most proud of, chapter 9.
That sounds great. I'm going to hide your face, Bill, your pretty handsome face, for a second. And this is the QR code to people to go and actually pre-order your book on Amazon. So folks, please grab your phone, take a picture of this, And yeah, get that book. It's gonna be really hot. All right, so let's go back and see what some of the people are saying. We've got Renato. He's saying congratulations.
Thank you.
We've got Gray. He says, Bill, I like how we're talking about learning. I'm a big advocate of action science. Chris Agaris, I hope I pronounced that correctly, fits in nicely with reframing.
Bingo. Love it. I look more into that action science concept.
Great. Guys, keep those comments and feedback, or say hello and where you're from to us. It makes us really happy. Bill, we are 2 minutes over the time limit, by the way, but that only means that we've been enjoying this very, very much. And I want to tell you something before we actually conclude this podcast. The first time I saw you, Bill, was in Las Vegas, and that was, I guess, in 2018 or 19, back in the good days when people actually were able to travel and have a beer and enjoy their time. And that's when I first saw you in person, and that was when they called you on stage to make a keynote. And they started with the music, and you just danced your way off to the stage, and you brought all this incredible energy, and people were just excited. And then you started your keynote, which is another piece of art, and that was amazing. How do you do that?
How do I it just is me. It just I have to tell you, before I did the podcast, I had music playing. I was dancing around the room. Isam, I got to tell you that I'm the luckiest person in the world. I've had opportunity after opportunity that I've stumbled into. Sort of, I'll call them Forrest Gump moments. Right place, right time. I've worked with an amazing group of people who have always shared and taught me things, and I've worked with some of the best customers you could ever believe, who are trying to explore and learn. So I think that I love what I do, and I'm very fortunate. And so I don't wake up every morning thinking about I have a job. I wake up every morning excited about, what am I going to do today? What am I going to learn today? What am I going to unlearn? So it's just the way I'm wired.
Love it. So it's just as basic as love what you do, and that's where you get that energy, and that's how you will be able to inspire many people, just like you're doing, by the way. So great. So speaking of that, so that was the first time I saw you, dancing on stage, and I saw you dancing on LinkedIn at a certain point, and then I saw you yesterday, I believe, dancing on Twitter. So I created this virtual stage today, and this is the first time I do such thing, by the way, Bill, and I want you to be the premier guest, to do an official virtual dance, and I'll join you in that dance, by the way, in a second. Are you ready?
I am up for everything. Let's do it.
Let's go for it. Rock and roll, Bill.
Rock and roll.
Freedom. Keep walking. Keep on your toes and don't
Love
stop
it, love it,
walking.
love it.
Freedom. To
Go, get him, Bill.
Lots to be learning, lots to be knowing about people. You gotta reach 'em, sit 'em right down. Then you gotta teach 'em about freedom. You gotta win it, gotta put yourself smack dab in it. Hey, tomorrow. Hey, don't go away. Oh, so
Talking about data all the time. Gonna make it happen. Gonna make it fine. It's me and you. For the Nobel Prize, we gotta get the facts out. Don't be anything but be fearless every day.
Love it.
Understand, you just can't abuse it.
You sure
Wow.
we recorded this? Maybe we shouldn't have recorded this.
I hope we don't regret this, but this was amazing. I love it. The first time anybody has ever done that on a live show. We've done it, Bill. Congratulations to us.
I know people are going to say, don't quit your day job. I understand,
Yes,
but still. Hey,
absolutely.
Isam, this was a blast. You know what? If you can't have fun with what you're doing, then why do what you're doing? It should be fun, and you should do it with people who like to have fun, and then everything is easy. So this
I
was
agree.
great, Isam. I greatly appreciate the opportunity.
I did love this episode. It's really dear to my heart for many reasons, and people are jumping over here celebrating us. Thanks guys. Robin saying thank you both for sharing your knowledge, and I really want to take the opportunity and thank you again for joining me on this live podcast. It has been real pleasure for having you, and I look forward to speak to you again soon.
Let's do it again. Isam, thanks much. And everybody, thank you for joining. And dance like there's no tomorrow.
Absolutely. Thanks, Bill. All right. Thanks, everybody, for joining today's show. That was me, myself, and Ben Schmarzo. We've talked about the economics of data. I hope you did enjoy the topic as much as we enjoyed discussing it. Before you go, just do simple things. Press the like button. It's right over there. It's very simple. Share it with your connection. Let the whole world see what we've done today. And keep the conversation going. Add comments, and we will be able to reply to you. And if you're watching this on YouTube, please do subscribe to my channel by clicking on that subscribe button over there. If you're watching this on LinkedIn, please go to my profile as well as Bill's profile, follow us, and add us to your connection. Thank you very much, and have a great day. Cheers.